Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today we'll talk about the solar eclipse of April 20th, 2023. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my patrons. I appreciate all of your support. Thank you for all of the encouragement you've given me over the last few months and years. If you would like to become a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Nina Griffin. And this is also where you can sign up at the highest tier for my monthly magical elections document, which teaches you how to make talismans that are astrological in nature and also the best times to make them. The solar eclipse of April 20th, 2023 is at 29 Aries, the last degree of Aries, and as such it is ruled by Mars. So it's a very fiery, very active eclipse due to being in Aries, which is a fiery and cardinal sign. Now, the sign Aries traditionally signifies the ruling class or royalty and the military or police. And so these are some of the groups or types of people who might be most impacted by the eclipse or who are going to be key players in the eclipse events. Now, Mars, being the ruler of the eclipse, is in Cancer, which is the sign of his fall. So the eclipse will still be about conflict and confrontation, which are Marsy kinds of events. But those engaging in confrontation will be doing so from a place of weakness because Mars is debilitated. Now, Mars generally brings problems around the time of the eclipse due to droughts, lightning, and insufficient rain. In the human world or society, he brings war, disputes, and fights, and certainly heavy involvement by Mars-ruled people, which as a very general shorthand are those who carry weapons for a living. Although Mars generally also rules criminals, and he also rules young men in terms of the ages of life. Now, on a societal level, Mars as a ruler will increase crime and feverish or infectious diseases. He can bring destruction to water or air vessels due to wind, lightning, and other freak accidents or storms. We also need to note that the eclipse conjoins Jupiter, and Jupiter's effects will add expansion of the martial energies in the eclipse. Normally, Jupiter is a peacemaker who kind of balances out and moderates Mars's energies, but here Jupiter himself is in Aries, and as such, he takes on the Mars mantle and expands Mars' influence. Note that Mars and Jupiter are in mutual reception in this chart in a slightly wide out-of-orb square. Jupiter is in the domicile of Mars, and Mars is in Jupiter's exaltation. So they are really working in tandem in many ways and in the same direction, even though their aspect is a square, which does show there is some tension or disagreement in the relationship. That mutual reception helps align their goals more or less in the same direction. Whether for good or for bad is a different matter. The particular combination of Mars and Jupiter is often associated with thunderstorms, since Jupiter rules thunder and Mars adds that stormy intensity to weather. The eclipse is going to impact four-footed animals, domesticated and wild, and it may cause earthquakes, harm to crops due to weather events and droughts, and also changes to sacred rites and worship or religious observances, which is sort of a fascinating traditional meaning of this particular type of eclipse. According to William Lilly, the 17th century English astrologer, eclipses in the third decan of Aries are, and I quote, "forerunners of lamentation, woes and mourning unto mortal men or most sorts of man, and the death of some noble woman. Unto these I may add that it designs destruction onto the lesser cattle, as sheep, conies, goats, hares, etc." End quote. The reason that he mentions a noblewoman is that this decan of Aries is ruled by Venus, and the fire signs signify the ruling class. So we sort of run these two together and they say, well, it has to do with a negative impact or death of a noble woman. But really, I think we can say it more generally, and we can speak of women who are more famous, women who are perhaps celebrities or influential in some way. Nobility, of course, has a much larger meaning in the modern era than it did in the 17th century. The effects of this eclipse will be primarily felt where the eclipse is close to the ascendant or midheaven. Interestingly, the eclipse is right on the midheaven in Beijing. Now, the eclipse won't be visible in China, but it certainly will make an impact because of the astrology. The eclipse also runs north-south through Germany, Austria, and the Balkans. So in these locations, the eclipse will be on the ascendant, and it will make an impact here as well. We of course have to mention that the impacts of the eclipse will be felt where it is actually visible, which is usually a relatively limited area. This eclipse is visible from coastal Western Australia, East Timor, and Eastern Indonesia. So of course, because the eclipse is actually visible from these places, the effects that we discussed are going to likely have a very powerful impact there as well. The duration of the eclipse from start to finish is about 5 hours and 25 minutes. So according to traditional rules about eclipse effects, it will continue to make its presence known and its effects will continue to resonate for about 5 years and 6 months from the date of the eclipse, which will be until October 2028. It is worth noting that the times when Mars will square the degree of the eclipse and when Jupiter conjoins the degree of the eclipse exactly will all be significant periods because the eclipse will be getting reactivated by the impact and the movement of these planets that were not in quite precise aspect at the time of the eclipse. Jupiter will conjoin the eclipse degree May 13th, and Mars will square the eclipse degree May 19th. So we can generally say that mid-May seems to bring back and raise to consciousness the issues originally raised during the eclipse. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.